about a couple games that happened over the weekend. The Michigan game and the Lions game. Both games have a lot to talk about. I'm going to let you cover mainly the Michigan game. I've watched the highlights of it, but because of issues, I was not able to watch it. So I will let you cover mainly the Michigan game, and I'll give my thoughts if you didn't cover them. And then we'll do a quick preview of the national championship game between Michigan and Washington. So the stage is yours.
Oh, nothing like pressure. You know me. I'm not
Yeah.
a big talker here. But yeah, I did watch the game. I felt bad for my wife because I had to be quiet and I was slapping things, beating the couch because baby's sleeping and all, so I couldn't scream when I wanted to.
Yeah, that's gonna be my biggest adjustment when my baby's born.
Yeah, it's not gonna be easy. Trust me.
Oh, I know. I got
One of
yelled
the
at your
things.
house.
What's that?
When I was with you during the Michigan game against, was it UNLV? I don't remember who they were playing, but they had a big interception or whatever, and I started cheering
Yeah.
your daughter trying to take a nap.
Yeah, it's all right. She'll get used to it.
Yeah.
But if you do recall, I did say, and I will say it, I actually picked Alabama to beat the Wolverines.
Oh, I know. I had basketball practice today, and a couple of the kids listened to us, and they came up to me and goes, "You guys picked Alabama." I'm like, "Listen, we watched the same games you watched. Like, you
Yeah,
can't tell me that.
yeah.
We're
I
Michigan fans, but we're going to tell you what we think is going to happen. We're not
Yes,
always right, but we're going to tell you what we think."
yeah. So basically, I said I didn't trust Michigan's offensive line, losing their um unanimous guard in Zach Zinner with the broken leg against Ohio State. If you watched Michigan as much as I did, that offensive line was not the same as the
No,
previous years.
no.
They struggled against teams when they shouldn't have, especially early on in the season. Bowling Green, UNLV, and East Carolina, they got pushed around, and I thought Bama has some pretty good guys on defense, and good I mean first rounders. Even their defensive line. I thought Michigan's offensive line was going to get pushed around. I thought that all Bama was going to do is just stack the box and make JJ throw. And Michigan's not that team to throw the ball. They want to run the ball, run you over, bruise you and everything, and then take their time throwing here and there. But what I was really impressed with is the fact that the defense won them the game.
Yep.
I I was speechless actually because I thought Bama, they just got these two, of course, it's Bama, so it's first round talent everywhere.
Yep.
Isaiah Bond and I think it's Trey Burton. They're two top wide receivers. Yeah, one guy didn't do, I think he might have had a catch or two, and that was Isaiah Bond. And that just goes credit to Minter and Will Johnson on the defense for saying, "Hey, I got this guy. Don't worry about me. I don't need help. I can handle my own." But also what was more impressive is the fact that they ended up getting, I believe it was 5 sacks in the first half against Bama.
I
I'm
think
not
that's what I
positive
heard.
about
Yeah.
that.
I think it was 5 or
But
6. I think it was 5.
but when and we've kind of talked about this. When you only have to rush 4 guys to get to the quarterback
Yeah.
and you can drop everyone else in coverage, that just makes it harder for them to pass.
Yep.
Um Now, where Bama did have success, and I have no idea why they went away from it, is they were running the ball on the outside, um, stretch runs, power runs, pulling, all that, and they were getting. I think they averaged at like some of their running backs averaged 6 point something yards, um, and I don't know why they went away from that. They Another great thing for Michigan, Alabama's center really struggled to snap the ball. I don't know if you saw any of the highlights.
Yeah, and I listened to a different podcast today that's all about college football, and Danny Cannell, the old ESPN guy, is on this podcast, and he was saying that's been an issue for Alabama all year, is
Yes,
their
that was
center.
the whole reason why they were in 4th and 31 against Auburn. was because of a bad snap.
But it's genius by Michigan. Again, I wasn't able to watch the game, but according to this podcast, the Cover 3 podcast, if you're college football fans, you should check them out. They're really great. But Michigan put their nose tackle right underneath the center and said, "All right, you can't snap. Okay, you snap, and then you got to guard this guy real quick." And apparently, Michigan's defense tackle, nose tackle, whatever position's called, is probably going to be a top two round draft pick.
Yeah.
So he's a stud.
Yeah.
So you basically can't snap the ball very well, and then you look up and there's a second round draft pick right in front of you.
Right.
That's me playing in Sundays next year. So
yeah.
that's great coaching by Michigan. Great strategy right there.
Yeah, the first half was great by Michigan. I believe it was Herb Street that was talking about that, where you have a guy that's lined up right across from you. You've already been struggling snapping the ball, and now you have to worry about guarding or whatever you got to do to that guy right across from you, where he knows that you've been struggling. Michigan's line is playing mind games with you. They've been pushing around all game. And another fact is in the first half, when your quarterback gets sacked that much, that plays a mental game on him.
Yeah.
He's not going to want to drop back and wait and find time to throw. And you can see that with some of it, with Milroe trying to run for his life at times. But I think it was just great overall defense. The second half was very interesting. And I didn't think it was possible for Michigan to do this, but they actually make in-game second half adjustments. And what I mean by that is, if you go watch during all these other games before that, Michigan was usually up big, so all they do is run the ball. So they never had to make the adjustments because they were always the better team in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is Alabama we're talking about, and Nick Saban is probably one of the best guys to make those adjustments at halftime. And I believe Herbie and them talked about this too. I know I saw clips of our buddy Orvalowski talk about this, of three things. It was getting men in motion, confusing the defense, and running things that they have not seen at all game. And one of them was the biggest drive of Michigan's playoff, you could say, was the 4th and 2 throw to Blitcorn, who all season never came out of the backfield to catch a pass. It was always he was in there to block or run.
Yep.
For most part. I mean, I'm sure he did catch a few passes.
But that's not what Corn was known for. Like, if you had Donovan Edwards,
that was Edwards' job, was to go out and catch the ball. So that was a great play call, great adjustment. Like I said, a lot of things they did great, making Alabama guess the whole time.
Yeah.
And again, the final play in overtime for Bama was a bad snap, led to Milroe trying to dive from, I think, like the 4-yard line and not even getting close to the end zone.
Yep.
I don't know. Do you listen to DP this morning?
No, I was not in an area where I can get that station. So
okay. Well, he had Saban's play call, or post game, I guess you should say, about the final play. He said the first time they had what they wanted, they had the great look, they knew they were going to score, and Hardball called the timeout. The second time was when Saban saw the look, felt this isn't going to work, so he called the timeout. And the third time was they thought they had the right play. He said it was just, with the bad snap, that gets everything out of time.
Yep.
And therefore, you have your quarterback trying to scramble up the middle, which is not what you should do, in my opinion. When Michigan's been dominant on the line, going inside out, I guess you could say. Yeah, that was a fun game to watch in the end and try not to ruin it and wake up my child. And I'm sure my wife was happy.
Yeah, I was laying in. Like I said, I wasn't able to watch it, so I had So for a while there, I was able to get the ESPN radio app to work. So I was able to listen to it. So I listened to the last Michigan defensive drive in regulation. So when they made Alabama punt, and then I'll talk about the special teams in a minute.
I was gonna say,
Uh,
I was gonna bring that up.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I listened to that, and then when overtime started, I was able to listen to Michigan's score, and then the app crashed or something with system overload. My guess is. So I'm literally now going on GameCast every 3 seconds, scrolling back and forth, trying to figure out what the heck's going on. So all I'm seeing is timeout, timeout, and I'm like, oh come on. And while I was listening to it, by the way, it was, I'm not even joking with you, 2 3 minutes behind. So you're texting me,
Yeah.
another friend's texting me, and I'm like, guys, like I'm listening to this and it's so far behind. Like
Yeah, I
just
was trying not to ruin any of it for you. That's why I
yeah,
asked, have you seen did you see any of that? So
no. So but one concern, I mean, obviously you're going to the national championship game, you beat a really good Alabama team. Alabama's in the conversation every year. So I don't want to be too negative here, but the special teams was a huge letdown for me. Uh, you're muffing 2 punts. The second one almost cost you the game. I
yeah,
mean, literally, like
you were
he's lucky,
inches
he
away
got out.
from
Yeah,
making it
a
a
safety.
safety.
Yeah, and then missing the extra, not even missing the extra point, the bad snap on the extra point. So now that's in the back of your head when you're going to tie the game.
Mhm.
You're like, am I? As a fan, you're just sitting there. Again, I'm watching the game cast of this, and I'm like, don't miss up. I didn't know the first snap happened. I just know they missed an extra. I didn't know there was a bad snap. I just knew they missed an extra point.
Yeah,
So I'm sitting here like, please don't miss another extra point, and thankfully they didn't.
right.
So, but the team they're playing, Washington, I watched the high. I did not stay up that late. I just wasn't going to stay up past my bedtime to watch another college football game. You probably did. Did you stay up to watch it?
Oh, so here's the thing. I will say this about well, as we're moving on, I know I'm going back to Michigan. I thought it was gonna be a repeat of last year's playoff game against TCU where we constantly were
Oh yeah.
shooting ourselves in the foot
I mean,
and
it
not
kind of was
playing
though. They just
complete complete ball like we did the whole, whole regular season. I thought, "Oh, great, here we go again." But what really impressed me was just the response this team had
yeah,
of, "Yeah, okay, we didn't do this, we didn't do that. Yep, we gave up a muff punt and the first time, which, I was like, oh, and that's probably going to be game because I thought it was going to be whoever steals an extra possession is going to win this game.
yep,
Um, but I was just impressed by the response that they ended up doing, and I I guess it's one of my coach, but nothing like sending out a guy who hasn't returned a punt in the playoffs yet,
yeah,
deep inside your own territory and having him first play of his first special teams of his, whatever, and he takes his eye out the ball or whatever, and like you said, almost lost the game, and that would have been very heartbreaking. But I'm proud
yep,
of this team for overcoming. And that Washington Texas game, I did not stay up because I was tired of kickoff commercial,
yeah,
injury commercial. It's getting ridiculous, and I don't
yeah,
remember who said it, but someone said it was touchdown commercial, kickoff commercial, and then like injury commercial. And
yeah,
I listened a little bit to Rich Eisen today, and he was actually at the Roseville game. He's a Michigan alumni. He has his own show too. Uh, he's like, yeah, I got tired of seeing the guy. If you ever been to any of the games, football games, there's a guy that's dressed in red, has a giant sign that's as tall as him, and above him is a LED board that tells him how much time there is. And he said every time it came out, it was always 3 minutes plus, and everyone would get out on their phone and realize that it was going to be a while before the next play. So this
yeah,
whole start stop is probably going to start driving people away from.
yep,
Yeah, it just was ridiculous.
yeah. Yeah. So moving on to the other game, it was Texas and Washington. Again, neither of us stayed up and watched that one. So my only knowledge of it is, again, the Cover 3 podcast. And then this morning I watched highlights for both games. Just by the highlights, it looks like Washington dominated the game. And for whatever reason, maybe it was Texas good defense, maybe it was Washington bad offense, maybe it was a little bit of both. But Washington just could not put the nail in the coffin on Texas. They would get turnovers and they would settle for field goals. And
Right.
kudos to Texas to holding to those field goals. And then Washington also had a lot of special teams miscues too. A couple muff punts. They were able to force some turnovers on Texas, a couple fumbles, but again, Texas was able to hold them to field goals. So,
And yeah, Texas had a chance to win it in the end.
yeah. Well, and so do you know, I'm not going to use the word controversy, but do you know how that game ended? Like with, so Washington had the ball, excuse me, and Texas had no more timeouts, and it was third down with like 55 seconds to go or whatever.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yep. Yeah.
And Washington runs a play because you get a first down, the game's over. And the Washington running back got hurt, which is the absolute worst case scenario for Washington because then the clock stops. Yep. So I'm watching the highlights because I knew that Texas drove down the field in the last minute to almost win the game. And I'm watching the highlights. I go, how the heck did Texas get the ball back to do that? And then I saw that. I go, oh, that's how. So, I mean, injuries are part of the game. I know there's a lot of people online today saying they need to change that rule. I'm not one of them.
Right.
Now, I think if you're faking an injury, and I don't know how you can prove somebody's faking an injury, but
you've seen them when they fake.
You've seen them, yeah. So, but obviously, this is not one of those times where somebody's faking an injury,
right.
So, you can't punish somebody there. But we were both saying this the whole time that usually in the college football playoffs, one semifinals game is a great game. The other one is a snooze fest. We didn't get a snooze fest.
No, we did not.
No. Now I don't know the history. I mean, I know the college football playoffs been around for 10 years or so now, if that.
Yeah, I think it was 2014 or 15 is when they first started the playoffs.
So I don't know every playoff year, but I'm gonna go with this is probably one of the better semifinal matchups we've had. So kudos to the college football playoff committee here. Very controversial picks for the 4 teams, and you know what? Everyone's still gonna have these conversations, especially with how Georgia manhandled Florida State.
You think Georgia was angry that game?
No, not at all.
They broke their own record of the national championship game and beat a team by 60.
Yeah. What was the final score? 65-3 or something like that?
I think it was like 63-3.
Yeah. So Georgia absolutely destroyed Florida State. So now Florida State obviously cannot say they're co-national champions now because they lost. And so before we go on to the national championship game and then the Lions game, do you think that, because this is part of the conversation because of Florida State, so with the transfer portal and players resting early for the draft, I mean, you saw it with Ohio State even, without McCord and their 2 top receivers, they only put up 3 points against Missouri. And do you think that's why the bowl season is down? Just because we had a comment last week. We were talking about the bowl games and how I'm just not getting the excitement that I have in years past.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the comments that we got was something along the lines of, well, it's used for player development, which, 10 years ago it was. But now college football is basically minor league football. It's basically, I know it's always been that to an extent, but now it's really that. With the transfer portal and players declaring early, there's just no pride in your school anymore. But and I'm on the player side. Like I think the players should get paid, and especially with how physical these sports are, and these kids can't get a part-time job at McDonald's or at the school cafeteria because they're in practice and class all day long.
Right.
So
Not to
I'm not.
mention, depending on what position they play, that if they're good enough to go to the NFL, that some positions your years are shorter than others.
Yeah. So I'm siding on the players here, but I guess what I'm getting at is, do you think that the transfer portal and declaring for the draft is why we've had such not great bowl games, especially with Florida State and their backup quarterback on the transfer portal, and like I said, Ohio State with McCord and their top two receivers either opting out for the portal or the draft. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. One thing I do want to point out, and I found this hilarious because it was Ohio State. Garrett Wilson, who was a great wide receiver at Ohio State, tweeted out something about how, man, it's a shame all these people are missing the bowl games, or I'm gonna look it up exactly because I want to get it right. Um, he decided to say that, and give me a second here, if you will.
Yeah, no problem.
Nothing like dead air right now. This is live, people. I know.
No, so I'll talk for a little bit. So I just think with all these transfer portals, and again, I'm with the players. Now, I think they need to put limits on the transfer portal, and we'll talk more about that some other time, maybe. Just because I think what could end up happening is a player starts at Ohio State, for example, a quarterback, and if you're not an elite quarterback, you're not starting there. So then he's like, well, no, I'm going to go to Mississippi State, and then you dominate at Mississippi State, and then USC calls you. So in 3 years, now I understand you might have to sit out a year after the second transfer, but still, like I know it's a business for these kids, but a very small percentage of them make it to the NFL, and then when you do make it to the NFL,
Mhm.
yourself, like the average NFL career is like not even 3 seasons, I don't think.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you got at some point you got to put the college back in college football, but I don't know if I think we've gotten past that point too.
Yeah. And I'll add to what the question you asked me, but I did find the tweet. He said, "Bowl games suck. It used to mean something." And then someone replied with the photo of it's saying, it might have been like on three or something. Garrett Wilson decides to opt out a bowl game, and it was just ironic that he said that, and then literally you did it the year before.
Yeah,
But I found another version of it, and unfortunately, he kind of makes a good point too. Is someone asked him that, yeah, you did opt out, but why? And he's like, well, I wish I didn't now, but yes, I did. He's like, he says, just to have played one more with his roommates and the team, whatever. He's like, it doesn't make sense if it's not a playoff bowl, which I get that,
yeah,
at the time the rules, yeah, like whenever it wasn't. Um, and then the scouts getting into these players' heads of, hey man, you're projected here if you don't get injured or whatever. This is where you're gonna go. This is where you're projected to go. This is what you'll make. Blah blah blah. But yes, I do think the transfer portal is ruining the bowl games. Um, the way I see it now is these bowl games are like spring games for teams
yeah,
instead of, versing each other in scrimmage for a spring game. They verse someone else. It's a
yeah,
glorified exhibition. And someone actually earlier on the show, Dan Patrick show, was like, well, why don't we just move these bowl games to week 0 and then go from there? I was like, well, I guess you could, but then you're limiting the postseason of what playoff what bowls what playoff the bowls go to. I guess I don't know how I'm supposed to say that.
yeah. One thing, and then we'll move on to the quick preview for the national championship game. Adding on to your comment on players getting injured, I can't remember. Was it Jaden Smith from Notre Dame? Is that his name?
Uh,
what was his name? Do you
Yeah,
know
I think it
exactly what
was
I'm talking about?
Jalen Smith.
Yeah, the linebacker. He was
No,
projected to be.
Roquan Smith. That's who it was,
Yeah, I
wasn't
don't
it?
remember his name for sure. I don't.
It was Smith
He was
was his
projected.
last name.
Yeah, he was projected to be a top 15 pick for sure, probably top 10 if not even higher. And he goes out and plays in whatever bowl. I mean, it was a New Year's Six bowl too, if I remember correctly. It was
Yeah, I think it
one of
was.
the one of the bigger ones. He goes out, plays for Notre Dame, and absolutely destroys his knee.
Mhm.
And he ended up getting picked in like the second or the third round by the Cowboys in that draft.
Yeah.
And he just, I mean, that injury cost him millions and millions of dollars. And I don't
Mhm.
think, now granted, I understand there's a lot of busts in the first round, but he never really lived up to his full potential after that. I mean,
No.
he had some good moments here and there with the Cowboys,
Yeah.
but so I understand with the draft side of things why, especially if it's not a college football playoff game, I understand why you're
Yeah.
opting out if you're, especially a first round pick. I completely understand that.
Yeah.
But moving on. Oh, go
Oh,
ahead.
yeah. The only thing I was gonna say is, remember when it was a big deal when Christian McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette didn't play in their Cheez-It Sun Bowl game
Yeah,
back then, and then now look at it, everyone's sitting out, transferring out. But yeah, like I said, it's just the transfer portal kind of killed the whole bowl season, and I always enjoyed the bowl season. You get
yeah,
these teams, you get to go to different areas. You get great names out of the bowl games.
like the Pop Tart Bowl.
Hey, that's probably my favorite bowl game outside the New Year's Six now with an edible mascot. Look it up,
I know it's
people.
great.
It's great. Uh,
But anyways, moving on. What's your we won't do game picks. We'll do that tomorrow with the NFL games. But what's your quick preview for the Washington Michigan National Championship game?
it's one of the best offenses in Washington with Michael Penix Jr. throwing the ball to very good outside receivers. And if you kind of I watched some of the Washington games just because they were good. Um, that dude always seems to know where his safety valve slash outlet is or the check down is, no matter if he's getting moved around the pocket. Even when he's getting hit, I think I watched one of the part of the Texas game. He was dropping back, gets hit, but still manages to throw a ball just where, like they always say, get it to where your receiver can get it or no one can get it. And it was like a 40 to 50-yard bomb that got him into, I think it was into the red zone. Um, so I think Washington's offense, they haven't, I'll say this, they probably have not seen this good of a defense coming up. I think Michigan had the better defense than Texas. Just because it's the no-name defense, like they've been saying all year. I think it'll be an interesting chess match game of offense and defense, and I'll
Yeah,
leave it at that.
I don't think Michigan's seen an offense quite like this either, though. Like, I mean, the weapons on offense, wide receivers, I think you can compare Ohio State's to it, but Michael
Yeah,
Penix Jr. Not is way
probably
better than
the
Kyle McCord, and even Alabama's
I say
quarterback.
Penix is probably the second best quarterback that they've seen passing wise.
Yeah, and then Alabama's quarterback Mel. Is it, I'm drawing his name right now. Wow, what's Alabama's
Jalen
quarterback?
Milrow.
Yeah, Milrow. He's a great running quarterback, but the arm, he's not going to beat you with it. That's what Michigan's strategy was last night. We beat you with our arm, or beat us
Hmm.
with your arm. I dare you.
Yeah,
And so, who do you think is the best quarterback that Michigan saw this year? And then we'll move on to the Lions.
it's Tua's little brother.
Okay. Yep.
He just it. Yeah, if he was on a different team and it wasn't Maryland, he would have definitely beat him. If he was on
Yeah.
Ohio State, yeah, he would have beat us.
Yeah.
But I think he's probably the best quarterback Michigan has seen so far, and he tore us up. Yeah, Michigan
Yep.
won, but that's because they just had more talent.
Yeah.
So I think this game's going to be the toughest game that Michigan will play, just because of
Yep.
how explosive that offense is.
Yep. Obviously, we were both hoping for a good game. Um, obviously, we want Michigan to win, but I also don't want to blow out either. I actually want this to be a good game.
Right.
I think it's got potential to be a really good game. Moving on, though.